said, but it's not what that party has said. That is simply, party doesn't say your party wants to go socialist. My party is socialist right now. I am, and they're going to dominate you, Joe. You know that. I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the Democratic Party is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out the pre-existing vision. By the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch. How many of those have survived? Or 7 million people have contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down?
Here we are. We're live. Hey, this is a test run, so we're figuring out. They're just kind of bickering right now. This is great.
Healthcare in the military. So don't tell me about this. To talk about. And if you were here, it would be 200. It would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You didn't want me to ban China, which was heavily infected. You don't want me to ban. All right, we're gentlemen.
I don't even know what's happening right now.
Talking about 2 million people. The president is a moderator. We are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead. Let me finish. The point is that the president also.
I'm also on Facebook right now. Facebook Live and Watch Party. So
in the court, and so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is all. You don't know it's on the ballot.
I mean the hypocrisy on the whole sports thing.
Why is it on the ballot? It's on the ballot in the court. It's on the court. Well, there's nothing happening there. Donald, you don't know her view on Roe v. Wade. I don't know.
You got to talk over him, Joe. Come on, man. Don't let him own you.
We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of topics.
Yes, laugh it off. That's good.
All right, Mr.
This guy's a
President,
clown.
the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last because I want to give if I may ask my question, sir. Good health care. Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare. Of course I have. Well,
where's Glenn?
I'm going to give you an opportunity. I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a big comprehensive plan. That is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of Obamacare. Chris, that was the worst part of Obamacare. Let me ask my question.
Chris Wallace is just going in on Trump. Biden didn't have to do anything.
Just
wonderful.
I'd like to protect people. I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your own. You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and
he doesn't want to replace
last Thursday,
he want a boogeyman all the time.
Signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump healthcare plan? Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something. There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do.
Joe, you have to come out swinging, man.
Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period.
I mean, he's laughing it up, which is great.
Nobody's done it. So we're cutting healthcare. All of the things that we've done.
Call him a liar, man. Call him a liar. Drop the F-bomb, man. You're going to game over. If he just tells him, what the then it's over. The whole thing is done.
What we're doing, prescription drug prices, we're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because they pay just a tiny fraction.
Man, this guy doesn't make any sense.
You'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and the argument that he makes, and other Republicans make, is that that is going to end private insurance. It is not. I can ask you the question. It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care. It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free. In most states, except governors who want to deny people
public health crisis is kind of important, no?
Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option. Number one. Joe, you agree with Bernie Sanders' far left on the manifesto. That gives you socialized medicine.
Don't give in. Come on, man.
The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders. Not very much. I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm here standing facing you. Pocahontas would have left 2 days early. You would have lost every
let him do it, bro. He's gonna try to get under his skin.
Here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm gonna get very lucky tonight as well.
And to go in on Trump.
Sure, because here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar. But I just want to make sure. I want to make sure. I want to make sure. Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir? No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has, you pick a piece of press. The wrong guy, the wrong night, at the wrong time. Listen, you agreed with Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, come on, man.
Let him
Tell him, shut up.
Number two,
That's what you gotta do, man. Just own it.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan. Absolutely, folks, you have an idea what
I'm over here.
Socialized medicine. Mr. President, I'll tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care. Because he, in fact, already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two, there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away. No, I want to give number three health care at a much lower price because he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to already fix it. He has never already fixed it to an extent. He has never.
Man, this guy. That's his entire strategy is just talk over people.
You're both speaking at the same time. Let the president. Go ahead, sir. Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make.
What did you do? You didn't do anything.
Individual mandate. We guaranteed pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well?
This is a stand-up comedy.
If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well. And I just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive. Premiums are too high. That doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it. We want to get rid of it. I understand it, but I have to give you roughly equal time. Please let the vice president talk. He has no plan for health care.
Yep.
Of course we do. He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising the health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about. All right, I have one final question for you, Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court? Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak.
Good job.
You should go out and vote.
Yes.
You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now. Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're senators. I'm not going to answer the question. Why would you answer that? Because the question is, the radical left. Would you shut up, man?
Yes! Yes! Will you shut up? Go.
This segment, we're going to move on to the second segment.
Shut up. Oh my God.
Keep yapping, man. The people understand you. 47 years, you've done nothing. They understand. All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject. So,
yeah, this is so.
Let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States.
Boom.
We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people today are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was.
His body language says everything.
It was a deadly disease. What did he do?
Come on, man.
He's on tape.
I want him to slip. I want him to
he didn't tell us or give people
say just slip
because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and he
hid in a bunker.
Insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude.
Best line of the debate so far. Will you shut up, man?
And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker.
You know what? Before you, this guy on the left as president, I forgot what a president sounds like. That's what it sounds like.
What needs to be done now to save
that's leadership.
So if we would have listened to you, 2 minutes, sir.
Having a plan.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000.
But they didn't listen to you, and look what we got.
China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic, he's a racist, and he's xenophobic. Because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute, it says 2 minutes. You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible.
He's not even answering the question, he's just talking about Joe the whole time. You're going to waste your whole 2 minutes, good.
President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of you Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governor said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is.
He spent the whole 2 minutes being nonsense hypotheticals.
I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job. I know how to do the job.
Anybody could have done that job.
Well,
literally anybody.
H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief 14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was no one. We didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he shut down.
Boom.
Shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad, you couldn't even speak to them, you had a nurse holding a phone up so you could in fact say goodbye? You would have lost far more people. And you would have been, and by the way, his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up, he said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all. Nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist. You know, we trust Dr. Johnson, Pfizer. By the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both
actually
touched
got
on
Trump
one
shook.
of the
Trump did not look like this
ask.
during Hillary Clinton's.
Focusing on the future,
But then again,
President
he
Trump,
felt
you have
dominant for a woman.
repeatedly
So now he's starting to feel like,
been at
oh,
odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the
doesn't
Centers for
have
Disease
misogyny
Control,
on his
Dr.
side
Redfield,
this
said
time.
it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those are your two words. But Dr. Slawi, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
well, I've spoken to the companies and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing.
He
because
invented
people like this
coronavirus in his
would
basement.
rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call it
you're
left, I don't know what I
the
call it.
head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr.
I
Slawi?
disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
He said it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after
when it's
that.
generally available.
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be delivering the same man. It's all set up. By Easter, this would be gone away.
Yep.
By the
Got
weather,
him.
it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your
Good
arms. That
job.
would take care of it. This is
Yes.
sarcastic. That was, I was said sarcastic. So here's the deal. This man
Look at
is
him, he's
talking
like,
about
"Ooh,
a vaccine.
I didn't say
Every
that."
serious,
No, but I said it was a
company is
sarcastic
talking
question.
about maybe
Nobody
having the
put the bleach in
vaccine
themselves. I
done
tried it.
by the end
That's
of the
it.
year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
We'll have the vaccine soon.
I want to pick up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying Senator Harris is saying you can't trust the scientists.
Well, no, you can't trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by the way, to the scientists that are in charge, by the way, they will have the vaccine very soon. But you believe?
What is this very soon? Can you give me a day? Can you give me a number?
In light of all the lies
maybe
he's
that.
told
Maybe
you
the aliens will
about
deliver
the
it.
whole issue relating to COVID, he still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how deadly
Injecting vodka? No, that won't work. 151.
and he didn't
You need a higher,
tell you. He's on record
higher
as
potency.
saying he panicked or he just looked at the stock
I mean, you really
market.
don't,
One of
but
the two,
might as well
because
go big
guess
and go
what?
home, right?
A lot of people die, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years
Come on,
you've done
go in.
this. And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe. No, if you would have had
He's trying
the
to get into
charge
his skin.
of
Come
what I
on.
was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being
I had
built
to, by the way.
again.
He took credit for closing the economy.
Okay. It's going up fast.
Okay. When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different
Smart.
approaches.
I mean, Joe needed to point out that
how the
he paid
virus
for his
is
grades.
handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide them Nancy Pelosi. Well, he's just shush for a minute. Tell it to Nancy Pelosi. And Schumer, by the way, Chuck, Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate.
Boom, that's true.
He sits at his golf course and, I mean, literally, think about it. You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact
Well, he wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open.
He
And
laughs like somebody's grandpa. And you're like, ah.
Let me sit you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second.
He said,
He wants to shut down the country.
I don't know what I was going to say, but I continue to
We didn't know
talk.
anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly
What do
people
we do?
with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people
He just
will be
keeps,
hurt.
he just
Like
talk,
continue.
that's all he
If you
does.
look
He's
at
just going with
Pennsylvania,
one-liners.
If you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election.
I want to move on to another subject. I wanted to go on to another subject.
Those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
Respond to that. President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited
I feel bad for
the
anybody
issue
having to stand up on this stage.
waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning the efficacy of
You have to
masks?
understand, if you look, I mean, I have
This is
a
like
mask right here.
a movie Grumpy Old
The
Man.
mask on it, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear a mask.
I think that Joe would be smart
I don't wear a mask like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be
to
sticking
bring
200 feet away from me. He showed up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
the biggest mask.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, yeah, just call him Lone Ranger. Just one time. Just call him, all right there, Lone Ranger. That's all I gotta do, man. Come on with the
I was
one-liner.
asking sir about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters. And they've also said the opposite. They've also said no serious person said the opposite. Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
I want to ask you, we got a minute left in this
masks are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks are good.
I want to
with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed
He's holding
together,
his own. He's doing a lot better than Hillary did.
outside. Yes, sir. Agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller
By talking about the
events
troops.
with
If he says something about the troops, and Trump says,
Nobody
oh,
shows
will.
up to his rally.
And then what I'm hoping is I'm hoping that once it does get there, that
you go first, sir.
Because
somehow,
people
organically,
want to say.
he can get Trump to say, I didn't say that, I didn't say that, and then if Biden can mention his son and get Trump to say something jacked up about a dead soldier,
Well, so far,
like, it's
we
over.
have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them
Because you know
outside.
Trump's
We have
thinking it. You know he said that.
crowds, as you
So if
see
he can get him to
every-
slip and just
literally
say something
24 hours
derogatory
notice.
about
And Joe does the
Joe's
circles
son,
and has
or
three
even just
people
veterans in general, if he
somewhere.
slips in this conversation, it's
One of
over.
the last big rallies he had, and a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask.
Got him.
Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. And that's what he said. I can't, I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another. No negative effect.
What about
No negative effect. We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000 people at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
He should have said, what about your buddy Herman Cain?
Responsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing, and people were.
What about your brother? Nobody knows how he was mysterious or died.
All right, then he's a fool. If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy? Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy
Boom.
is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown. In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in,
He's
we
really
closed
rehearsed
it down,
that. He
which
said that
was
so many
very hard
times.
psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
People is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear a mask. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look at these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well.
Last time I checked, the only person who shut anything down was you.
We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is
he didn't even answer the question.
Billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Another billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax.
He doesn't even answer the questions. He just rambles.
He only focuses on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no. Sir, it's just I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes.
You don't like that, do
If I get my time back. The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in a way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely.
How did Donald Trump tweet 6 minutes ago?
His administration would give the teachers in schools.
How's that even possible?
And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national
That doesn't even
emergency.
make sense.
Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing.
Like literally 7 minutes ago, Joe wants to shut this country down. I want to keep it open.
On the job and take care of the needs of the American people, so we can open safely.
Your time is up, sir. Well, you're going to get to
It's out of control.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools.
You already made your statement, buddy.
Open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their states
Come
shut
on.
down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town, and I'm not sure it can ever recover.
Moderator, come on, what are you doing?
People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it.
All right,
people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out?
Gentlemen, we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know,
yes, good point. Emma Vigilant from Young Turks said Biden asked regular folks how they're doing in this pandemic as compared to millionaires and billionaires. Smart.
a year in
Trump interjects to say regular people are doing good. That's awful strategy because no amount of Trump PR can change that we're in a
a lot
depression.
of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes?
Mark Ruffalo said
each of those
Democrat
2 years?
states, Democrat-run states have done the best at flattening the curve. New York State had to deal with COVID basically alone.
Let me just tell you,
Donald Trump knew the virus was coming from Europe and it let it happen. You hear the hatred he has for those of us living in blue states. He does not see us as Americans. It's true.
I went. You'll see
He only caters to his base. He only worries about red voters. And even then, he doesn't care about them. He just wants to vote.
Report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely
Can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis.
I built
I'm asking you a specific question, which is.
Let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand.
Somebody said this is like The View, but for men.
Mr. President, I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid?
I'm with the guy who's not scared to release his tax return.
In 2016 and 2017.
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So not 700.
Millions of dollars. And you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something. It was the tax laws.
John Cusack said he's blocking anyone who isn't aggressively anti-Trump until the election is over. Sorry, no time for your BS.
Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is.
Chris Hayes said, is Trump going to do his weird sniffing thing tonight? Have we ever figured out what's up with that?
And for tax credits, we built a building and we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he just admitted he fired them, and then that's what caused it.
Code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher on the money a school teacher makes is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who in fact need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over in the last 25 years?
He wasn't the president, you idiot.
You are president screwing things up.
You were a senator, and
Yes.
The worst president America has ever had.
Boom!
Let me just say, Joe, I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, taking care of your veterans.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on
Trump's trying to run this thing like he's not already the president.
$1 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that
So many memes, so little time.
Taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis done by Wall Street firms points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. that we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
Well, by the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it billions of dollars? Vice President Obama.
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done, and you know what happened? You got it done. Our economy boomed. It's never boomed. The economy.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct? Not lower taxes.
The entire time he's doing this,
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming, it turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery.
You can't just say things and make them true.
Since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks.
No,
Joe,
disconnect the stock market from the economy. Show him, because that's all.
I'll tell you what,
The stock market is not a true reflection of the American economy.
And plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Man, what is this guy with his one-liners?
The worst recession, short of a depression, in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it. It wasn't he blew it. It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery.
Well, sir, is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because
Trump's entire success is predicated on the fact that 8 years of Obama set up a good booming economy. I mean, any financial analyst can tell you that. Any economic analyst would be able to tell you that.
Chris, they said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. We were not standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile manufacturing. We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And the fact they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
It's not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from John, and went to Michigan and went to Ohio.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so when you take a look at what he's actually done, he's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder.
China ate your lunch.
He takes out.
What does that even mean?
Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it?
He's getting flustered because his attacks suck now.
Question and an answer.
None of that is true.
Really?
Mr. President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
He get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice
We got
Mr.
$3.5
President,
million.
that is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
He was making $183,000 a month with no experience in energy.
Mr. President,
My son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
This is wonderful.
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath
So let me ask you this.
No, go ahead, Mister. I'm listening to you.
People under, you got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh, really?
I did it
I don't know who they are.
well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't.
Well, here's the,
with you.
Go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word.
well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey, let me just say, dude.
No, call him a clown.
That is simply
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
Mr.
Every single one of them lost.
This is not about my family or his family. It's about your family. The American people.
Boom.
That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
It didn't take that.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
He stood up.
No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion,
That is
You know what? You're
absolutely not true.
You're doing it.
You're
not true.
Gentlemen, I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to be, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal. We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr.
Well, they're
President,
not
you can
each
say
going to
anything
have
you want.
200 votes.
I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting.
That's all right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less than,
plenty.
no, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides,
he said that was what
directly
inspired him.
led you to launch this run for president. President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for Black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years?
Good question.
Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, spewing, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president's ever said anything like that. It is this now. Second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military do tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then
upside down, by the way.
After that, the bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
In a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Jefferson.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they called you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done.
Ask him about the Central Park 5.
You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because, you know what, if they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and, in many cases, radical left. And they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case, decided not to charge any of the police with homicide. You said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is.
Francesca, she's just like doing things with her hands.
In education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us.
Good job.
But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out.
Yes!
Work this out. So
that's a plan, guy. That's what that sounds like. That's what leadership sounds like.
These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it, but we have to have a system.
No, he doesn't like that at all. Look at him, he's so mad.
And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate.
My talking points aren't working.
Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
He's going to try to interrupt when he starts losing. That's what he does. He interrupts. See? He has to spew lies. He's so mad.
I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else.
You know it?
He would know.
Like the greatest scandal of all time, Obamagate. You know it. You know what it's about.
You had no status in life. It was sort of a
Hold
reversal.
on. Person,
If you look at the people, we would pay
woman,
people hundreds of thousands of dollars
man,
to teach very
camera,
bad ideas
TV.
and frankly very sick
I did
ideas.
it.
And really, they were teaching people people to hate our country.
What?
And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Teaching diversity is teaching people to hate.
This country.
God,
They were
this guy,
teaching
man.
people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's not racist. Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this.
Let him finish.
The fact is that
He's like, I hate when he responds like a real person.
people have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me who grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different
Good
faith.
job.
They look down on people
Identifying with the American people. Very
in fact,
smart.
we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this
Regular
country
Joe.
together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you look at...
Nothing compared to now, buddy.
Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now. But the
No, it definitely wasn't.
The Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
You
crime.
still haven't mentioned. Are you in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow
Are you in
it a
favor
little bit
of law and order? Go ahead.
You ask a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
This is
Let him
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more in ours.
All right, we're down to your Mr.
You're
President.
done.
You're going to
You're
go
done.
Mr. President.
Every record in the
Mr.
book.
President, you'll be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
We had trouble. We're Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200% crime. It is crazy what's going on.
Statistics
and he
are,
doesn't want to say
I
law
think
and
he
order
understands
because he
how
can't, because
statistics
he'll
work.
lose his radical left supporters, and once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country, and they ran it the way he would want to run it, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And
Good,
you would
good.
see problems
Keep talking
like
about
you
that.
would see
A suburb unless you took a wrong turn.
I know suburbs.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles on racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and
Good
white and
job.
Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though, and in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support? It means, let me, if I might finish the question, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. and I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what he's talking about, defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any
literally
law.
just said the opposite of that. This guy is
He
a
has
moron.
no law enforcement.
That's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
Look,
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time.
we don't have time to do anything.
All right, sir. Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the
They're
moderator's
hard. I don't
role,
think they're hard.
and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted. And anyone who commits it.
But you've never called for the people, the leaders, excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Here's what
I asked him to get the killer of a young man in the middle of the street, and they shot him. And for 3 days,
President Trump
wouldn't do anything. I interrupted the U.S. Marshals, and they took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Yeah, you said that.
Kellyanne.
I don't know who said that.
She said that. And so here's the point.
She did.
The point is that
She did actually say
that's
that.
what he is keeps trying to rile everything up.
Kellyanne Conway.
He doesn't want to
Her and George Conway right now are fighting.
Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how
they're
to
going to be
deal
doing
with this.
something later on.
What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly.
I hate you
And
so
every
much.
single solitary
And to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly
I
criticized.
have to answer his stuff.
Call me stupid again. Call me stupid.
No, you've been talking back and forth. I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
sir.
I would love to end it.
If you want to switch seats, we can
very quickly.
We can do that. But
I said that the National Guard would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland? Are you prepared to specifically do it?
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing. Not from
No,
the
but
right
you
wing.
won't say it. You're still not saying
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Would you like me to condemn
white supremacists and right
Proud Boys? Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa.
He just said, boys, stand back and stand by. It's like, I mean, you won't do it.
This is a left-wing
But you won't condemn white supremacy.
not an organization.
White supremacy. White supremacy. But you won't do it. That tells you right there.
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next question.
Damn. Wallace got him good.
Tells you the truth is
Oh.
that's a bad idea. And I tell you what, I have no idea. Antifa is a dangerous radical.
Antifa, bro, come on, man. Antifa crap. Antifa's a...
I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment
What is
hoax.
wrong with this guy?
And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything
Because
was
of
going.
8 years of the Obama-Biden administration,
Going to happen. People were calling.
he practically walked in
They were calling
to something that was good.
It's time, maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because
That's a meme right there.
it was a mess. And we now got a 91%
This is
approval
wonderful.
at the VA, our vets. We
Ah.
take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first
you know,
term,
whenever he
I'll
says
have
some people,
approximately
whenever he says some
300
people say he's
federal
lying,
judges
and whenever he
Court of
says,
Appeals
sir,
judges, 300,
whenever somebody says,
hopefully
said to me, he
great
said, sir, you're
Supreme Court
doing a great
judges.
job. Whenever he does that,
That
whenever he
is
says,
a
sir, you're doing a great job,
the likes of
that's
which
him
very
making
few
up a
people-
story.
You know, one of the reasons I have so many judges.
And some
because
people, like, give me an
President
example,
Obama
give me a
and him left
name.
me 128
I still gonna go back to the fact that he didn't
judges
condemn
to fill. When you
white
leave office,
supremacy.
you don't
He
leave
refused
any
to do it.
judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president. You can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both of your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
You still got $3 billion.
There we
And
go.
by the way,
Come on.
Mr.
Come on.
Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, sir. No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you
Yes.
talk about them
Here we
being
go.
losers and being and just being suckers. My son was
Boom.
in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot. And the people left behind there were heroes. And I resent.
You talking
like
about Hunter? Are you talking
I'm
about
talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about
I don't know, Bo. I know Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true.
For cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. Once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places. He
My
made a
son,
fortune,
my son,
and he didn't have a
my
job.
No,
son,
don't take it off.
like a lot of people we know at home,
Boom.
had a
Good
drug
job.
problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he
proud of
given
my
tens
son?
of millions
All right,
of
but he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right,
tens of millions of
he was
dollars.
given
That is
tens of
totally,
millions of dollars.
discredited. We've already been
Discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a
No, but when
judgment call
somebody
here.
gets $3.5 million
Okay, right.
from the
Let's
mayor
talk
of
about
Moscow,
Let's talk
that's
about
not
the
true.
gentleman
That report is totally
Why did he-
discredited.
I
Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money. That report was written for political reasons.
you know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West
Man.
are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires
is
on climate
intense.
change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change?
This is unfortunately a topic I think
What
Trump's
will
going to
you
win just
do
because his
in the
base
next
doesn't,
4
they don't
years
care
to
about the
confront it?
climate.
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of
It's like
commission.
he's conducting a
If you look
symphony.
at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are
Like he's smelling his own
very
fart.
happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing
He's
well.
wafting
As
it
far as
away.
the fires are concerned,
He's smelling it.
forest management, in
He's
addition to
smelling his
everything
own
else,
bullshit.
the forest
He's
floors
wafting it
are
away.
loaded up with trees,
Smelling it,
trees that are years
wafting
old,
it away.
and they're like tinder,
And then he outlines it in a
leaves
box.
and everything else.
He
You
puts it
drop
in a
a
box.
cigarette in there, the whole
Pushes
forest
the box
breaks out.
away.
You've got to have
Puts it in a
forest
box.
management.
Pushes it
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
This guy is a turd burglar,
We have
man.
to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project. And it's
This guy
very
is out of
Do you
control.
believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions
Guy,
contributes to the global warming of
I
the
think a
planet?
lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning.
Yeah, that should tell you. Climate change is real. You haven't gotten it by
Forest
now.
management, good forest
This guy,
management.
bro.
You wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city.
How's the
He
audio?
said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that
Yeah.
problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground.
Yeah,
burning
that's
down
climate
because of a
change.
lack of
Guy,
management.
look,
If you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why
he's
have
just
you
going to say a
relaxed-
talking point about some BS about save money and
Why
blah,
have
blah,
you
blah.
relaxed fuel economy standards
Irrelevant.
that are going to create more pollution from cars
Well,
than
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer, it would be much cheaper by
But in the case of
$3,500.
California, they simply
No, but you
ignored
would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra
What is he
little
talking about?
Okay.
of gasoline. And
Car has computer, therefore expensive.
For electric cars, I've given big
What are you talking about?
incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you, about
anthropologists are going to look back at these last 4 years and go,
jobs.
what
You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as
renewable energy will open more jobs, give more opportunities, innovation, growth. I mean, that's obvious. This guy trying to bring back coal.
Another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's on their electric vehicles, making sure that we can have over 500,000 charging stations and all the highways that we're going to build in the future. We're going to build an economy that in fact is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they in fact are weatherized in a way that in fact they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion. Say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that the fact is, it's all true. And here's the deal about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion. I'm talking about where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building. It's the that is not where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows. That's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion.
Don't respond with not true. Just talk over it.
That our country could make in 100 years if we're not the case.
All right, let me
Don't defend. Don't go on defense. Go offense.
I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that. The fact is, it's going to create millions of good paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. I never said that.
He did actually say that. He wanted to nuke hurricanes. He did actually say that. He said, I never said that. I'll go on Twitter right now and find out.
By making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now.
Billions and billions
on floods,
billions,
hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look Look what's happening just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. They didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green
you want to rebuild
is not my plan.
Axios report. President Trump has suggested multiple times to senior Homeland Security and National Security officials that they explore nuclear bombs to stop hurricanes from hitting the United States. Trump, of course, said fake news.
He called the military stupid bastards.
I did not.
He said stupid bastards.
Sir, stop.
I would never say that.
Play it.
Go ahead. Mr. Vice President, answer his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all is Randy's.
I'm having a little trouble myself. But and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
The Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
He's in favor of the Green New Deal. Interesting.
You support? No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment. Election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early.
You're not going to get any Trump supporters. They're blinded. But you could have picked up a lot of people on the left doing that. I think you should have just leaned in on it. That's my opinion.
Over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day. What are you prepared to do?
There are too many people in this country who have zero integrity.
That the next president will be the
no matter
legitimate
what.
winner.
He could kill somebody
in this final segment,
Joker style right now. He could kill the moderator on television right now, and people still vote for him.
Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote.
He was the president, so
Homeland Security Director as well as the FBI Director says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating.
That is America.
The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and their polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that will be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like.
The American people are in control.
Is it going to change and get 4 more years of these lives?
Understand that.
Mr. President,
that's good.
2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe
talking to the American people, it's very smart.
There's been no transition from when I won.
No,
I won
he's just
that
talking to
election.
himself.
And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup.
See, me.
They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won. From the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady, they were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot.
We caught you.
Okay,
Like, what are you talking about?
is okay. You're soliciting. You're asking. They send it back. You send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump. Just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan.
Even the people that are voting for you know that you're wrong, but they're just voting for you anyway. Like, that's the difference. Even the people that are voting for you know you've done a terrible freaking job. They just won't admit it. But they know
it. It's a shame. And can you imagine where they say...
There is no divide. Everybody knows you failed. Everybody knows.
November 10th. That means that's 7
Well,
days after
I mean, not everybody.
the election.
He doesn't know.
In theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by
2 minutes
Democrats.
is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely.
So
I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots,
he's hoping that a conservative court will lean into making a decision. However, he doesn't also know that, or maybe he does know, I doubt it, that the House can make a decision.
Invalidated. They take them. We don't like them. We don't like them.
But what are you going to do about it? There are millions of ballots going out like that.
You go and vote. You do a solicited ballot. No, that's okay.
See, he wants to delegitimize the election, set that up, and then it sets the precedent for him having the ability to say, we have to take it to the Supreme Court. So basically, he's going to sue to try to have the election results go in his favor. That's the only thing he's good at, lawsuits.
They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers.
And really, he's not good at his lawyers are good. He's also got the Department of Justice doing his personal work. So.
Okay. This is not Vice President Biden.
5 states had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What we're saying
that should be the standard anyway. The fact that this guy's up here saying that's a fraud, like, I mean,
by election day. If it doesn't get in until the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. So he's just afraid of counting the vote.
Oh, he's afraid. Yeah, he doesn't like that. See, that's the first time he's been defensive. The first time he's been defensive, when you talk about him being afraid, challenge him in that way. Call him scared. Call him like, that's what you got to do. Get him on the run.
It has been that sizable number, sometimes hundreds
challenge
of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity in the deadline. So the question I have is,
I don't even know what is that, Tribble?
That the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute.
It looks like he's wearing a Kangol hat, but that's been like shaved.
When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit.
It almost looks like a beret.
No, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to.
But a beret that's been washed so many times that you can see right through it.
Before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me,
No, no, no.
when you
I have a final.
80 million ballots,
I have a final
Senate
question.
is swamping the system.
You
know it can't be done. You know it can't. And already,
all right. So now,
failed
final, wait a minute, gentlemen. Final question is: in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited.
The worst,
by
dude.
law, 8 states
I'm afraid to see what we're gonna
even
get
beginning
next.
to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and
These guys open the floodgates
until
for
election
just.
day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is. That it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir. Finally, for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen.
You cannot do that.
To do it. As you know, today there was a big problem in Philadelphia.
That's a federal crime.
They're called poll watchers. A very safe.
He's encouraging, man.
They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch.
Oh, this guy.
Because bad things happen in Philadelphia. Bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what.
So he's saying he's not going to accept the results. That's what he's saying.
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million.
You're going to have to throw this guy out.
These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President Biden, that's good? Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes. Here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until election day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since at the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at
You had an opportunity to respond. Go ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal.
They should have a way to shut their mics off.
And he will too. You know why?
That's what they should do. Like when the person is like, oh, you're done. Shut his mic off.
All the votes are counted. That'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for
moderator.
Democrats.
The moderator should have that ability. A giant button in front of them, so they can hover their hand over it.
That's the end of it. It's the end of this debate.
Ballot count.
We're going to leave it there. To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University.
Oh, they're doing 3 debates?
And the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The 2 vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris,
I can't wait for that.
will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you.
More than enough for tonight.
Well, it is hard to know where to start. I'm not sure how people are going to feel about that to be continued at the end. People have to make their own judgments about how the candidates handled themselves tonight, who made the better case, who offered plans for the future, who told the truth, and who deserves to be president.
I mean, only one candidate made a case and talked about the future. The other candidate was just saying, you know, how terrible things are. I'm still live, by the way. All right, wait. So I'm just gonna point this out. I'm not gonna do an after show because, I mean, it is what it is. So I'm just going to point out that my son had a homeschool assignment today, and one of the questions here, you can read that. Some people collect me. Without me, you wouldn't get your cards in the mail. What am I? Now, this was not influenced by anyone. I swear to you, this is his real response. Not influenced in any way. That was his genuine response. The answer is obviously stamp, which, you know, surprisingly is close to Trump. But that's what he put. He said, some people collect me. Without me, you wouldn't get your cards in the mail. What am I? Because of the mailboxes being removed. You see what I'm saying? Even children are well aware of what's going on. So there are people who are voting for him anyway, but they know exactly what they're voting for. It is what it is. So that was interesting. I'm gonna have to refill this because, man, what a good one. That was a way to start the night off. I would honestly say Joe Biden won that. When he just said, we called him a clown. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, or anybody who's watching it later. And this little weird ball is gonna go away.